Hi, and thank you for joining me today for a demonstration of the ALEN Records Management System. The next few minutes will give you a glance into how an officer would use the ALEN RMS to write a basic routine incident or offense report. The ALEN RMS is commonly used for much more than routine reporting, including reporting NIBRs and state data to your state agency and reporting crime statistics to your local government officials. Additional functionality is covered in other video demonstrations, but if you would like a thorough personal demonstration, please call us or email us, and our staff would be happy to set that up. You can look for details on how to reach out to us at the end of this video. In this demonstration, we're logged into a fictitious agency called Rockmount PD. We're logged in as an officer whose first name is Officer and whose last name is One. Even though this is not a real agency and these are not real officers, the software you're looking at is the same production software that our clients use every single day. We have a sales instance of it set up for use in times like this. But as you can see, up in the top right-hand corner is Officer One's name. For today's demo, let's assume that Officer One is male, and we'll refer to him that way throughout the discussion. Our demonstration scenario is that a call has come in from a citizen complaining about drug activity at the Chevron station in the parking lot that's visible from her apartment window. Officer One responded to the call for service, secured the scene, and actually made an arrest. The call for service is complete, and Officer One is now ready to write the offense report of what happened. We'll also assume that Officer One is completing this work from the mobile data terminal inside of his patrol car. The ALEN system is completely hosted in the government cloud and available to your officers from any standard computer or tablet with an internet connection. So, from anywhere within the ALEN system, Officer One will navigate to the Records Management module by clicking on the RMS option in the very top menu bar. Clicking on the RMS module brings Officer One to the RMS dashboard. He can create a new case by either clicking on New Offense Case or clicking on My Work. Today, Officer One's going to click on My Work, which will open a panel that defaults to his Active Cases grid. On this grid, he can locate, open, and work on any case that he's assigned to. Please note that there's another tab that he can use to view cases that he's a part of that have been completed or closed. But for our demonstration scenario, Officer One will create a new case so he can write the report, and he'll do that by clicking on the Create Case button. He'll choose an offense case type, and the system will set up his new case. So what's happened in those few seconds is the system assigned a case number and created all the database entries needed for Officer One to enter data to write his report. So by default, we start on this screen, and I want to mention that even though the case number was assigned automatically, if it's your standard operating procedure to use a case number that was given to you by dispatch, then you're free to do that, and it's an agency setting that we will change or set when we get you set up. And that way, when the officer creates a new case, he'll be asked for the case number and be able to key it in and then come to this screen with that case number. So before Officer One enters the information and generates the report, I want to explain what you're looking at and how to navigate this particular screen. In cases, we have components, and the components of a case are things like parties, vehicles, property, and the components of any case are listed down the left-hand panel in the components panel of this window. So as a user inputs these components, this list can grow. It can be very short for a very simple report. It can be very long for a more detailed case where you have, say, a lot of property. And you will have cases where you only need one or two of these component types and not all of them. In our demonstration scenario, Officer 1 will have one party and one piece of property. He won't have any vehicles, okay? But all of the components work the same way. So when you see Officer 1 enter the party, you'll get the idea of how all the component data entry works. As we move from top to bottom on the components list, the tabs across the top in blue will change. And that's because the system's dynamic and brings to the user those data elements that are necessary for the given piece of work that the user is trying to perform. So as you can see, when I click on to add a new party, the tabs across the top will change. When I go back to details, I'm brought back to the tabs across the top for the detailed information that I need to work on. So in order to start the process of writing the report for the fact that Officer 1 made an arrest for drug activity, he's going to start with case details, which is where we are now. The incident date and time are defaulted to the system date and time when the case is created, but they can be changed easily. To change them, you would just use the calendar and the clock. We're going to take the default and just let it go with the defaults, but they can be changed. Then what typically happens is the officer wants to add the offense, and that's easily done by clicking on this plus button, and the offense field is made available, and the officer can key in whatever he knows about the offense he's trying to add to this case. So we know it's a drug case, so Officer 1 keys in drug, and I want you to notice that as Officer 1 keyed in the word drug, the matches to drug appeared, and Officer 1 is able to just pick whichever violation is needed for this report. So we'll choose the drug narcotics violation. We can change the count if it's more than one. We can mark it as a felony, and we can mark it as a primary offense. And from now on, it can be edited or it can be deleted and something else could be put on there. And that's really important if you're dealing with a situation where you're not 100% sure what the offense is, but you know that it's drug related, for example. Scrolling down, beneath the offense information is a place for your officers or your records keepers, whoever might be doing this part of it for you, will tag the offense as gang related, hate crime related, use of force, that sort of thing. And directly under that, you'll see check boxes where you can indicate whether this case had drugs involved or involve some sort of stranger situation or family violence. And again, choosing to check any of those will feed into your crime data reporting and affect your crime data reporting for your agency. But we know it's a drug related case, so we're going to say drugs and we're going to tell it that it was crack cocaine. Further down below is information that we won't need for our scenario, but if this was a theft case, you'll be able to give the specifics of the theft case. And if CSI came out and had to collect stuff and study the scene, there'd be a place for all that to be recorded here as well. Officer 1 has completed the information needed about the offense, and we can move now to any of the links across the top here that we might need. Now, he's almost always going to need location and narrative. So we're going to add the location of this case and be able to use it in other areas of the case. But before we do that, let me explain some of these other tabs. Status and disposition is self-explanatory. That allows whoever's in charge of maintaining your records management system to mark the cases when they are cleared and if they're cleared by arrest or what. The officers tab allows anybody with authority to add officers to the case. So this is where if you had a case that went to investigation, you would add the investigators here. Related cases is mostly used by investigators, and that is if they are seeing a correlation between one case and another and they suspect that the same offender is involved, they can relate the cases here, and that way as they're working through their casework and they get a break in one case, they can quickly see what other cases it might also give them a break in. Case lock is a really important function, and what this does is it allows anyone with authority to lock down the case so that only certain individuals can see it. And this is important for sexual abuse cases or child abuse cases or even internal affairs cases. But that's what case lock is for. Calls for service, this is where you can record the call for service information that originated this report. And if you're an ALEN user of the ALEN CAD system, and you choose to, you can have a records management case created from a CAD call, and this tab would show you exactly which call for service was the call for service that was used to generate this case. And then you've got a documents tab that allows you to upload and store any case related documents you want to right here in the ALEN system. Those are the tabs across the top, but we are going to go to location and set the location. There's several ways you can set the location of a case. One way is to pull it from an address book, which is what we're going to do. The other way is to enter the address in manually. You can do that if you want. You'll notice some NIBRs fields at the bottom, premise type and secondary premise type. Your records managers will know more about that than your officers will, so we're not going to worry about that right now. But let's just add a location. Now, the address book is a cool feature. It is a repository of locations that your officers often respond to. Like in our example, it's going to be the Chevron station. The Chevron station is in an area where a lot of drug activity occurs and calls for service happen there all the time. Reports get written there all the time, so we want to add it to the address book. By doing that, then when we do have to write a report using that location, it's a simple import. We can just click on the address book, type in what we're looking for, select it, and it becomes our case location. So that's the fastest way to get a location into a case. Part of the setup work that we'll do with your agency is try to get data out of your current system and analyze it and figure out what data should become part of this address book. Once something's in the address book, it can be used throughout the system. So now we've got the offenses set and the location set. Next, we could put in a narrative, or we could add the party first. So let's go add a party. To add a party, and we only have one, we want to come over to the components list. Under parties, there aren't any yet, so we're going to click add new. This is a reminder that I need to save my changes. So I'm going to say save and continue. It's going to save everything I've done so far and open up the parties component. Now, when I add parties to a case, I have to identify their type and I have to put in certain information. When possible, you want to import your party data from your master index. The master index is a database behind the scenes that gets built over time as you work in the ALEN system. So the first time you deal with someone, you will by default be adding them to your master index. So rather than adding them twice, what you want to do is you want to find them in your master index and then import them into your case. So we're going to search for our suspect and we're going to see if he's in our master index, and if he is, we're going to import him in. It's a simple thing. We can just key in his name. His name is Rick Gonzalez, so we can key in Rick Gonzalez. That's one way, and click search right here. The other way we could do it is if we are using the ALEN CJI NCIC query product, we could run a query on him and import him in. So in this demo, what we're going to do is we're going to go to our query history. We're going to assume for a second that we did run him, and we're going to go to our query history and we're going to find him. Here's Rick Gonzalez, and we're just going to import him in from our recent queries. And we got a hit down here in our possible matches. He does exist in our master index. That's no big surprise. He's a regular, repeat offender, but we want to make him part of this case, so we click the import button. Now Rick Gonzalez is a party to this case, and we have 8 or 9 additional tabs now that we can fill out about him. Okay, so we're not going to go through all of them, but all the normal required stuff is there, like aliases, scars, tattoos, and other markings. There's a citations tab. If Rick Gonzalez ever got a ticket in our citation program, those citations would show up over there. And then case documents and global documents, that's for us to store stuff specific to Mr. Gonzalez and this case, and specific to Mr. Gonzalez no matter what case we're looking at. So that's what all those parties tabs are. Because we know him, all the data is filled out. If we didn't know him, we would need to fill that all out, and then it would become part of our master index. For this particular case, Mr. Gonzalez is being arrested. So we're going to mark this little tag right down here, arrested, and it's asking us if we're sure. We are. And now Officer 1 has a new tab called Arrest. If you want to, you can use the ALEN arrest report, and that's what this arrest tab is for you to fill in everything you need to know about the arrest and produce the arrest report. We're not going to do that in this demo just because this is a preview, a quick look at what incident and offense reports look like, but that's what that arrest mark is about. I want to also mention that as soon as we mark him arrested, you see over here by his name, you've got this little A. That's a visual indicator to anybody that looks at this case that we have someone who was arrested, and his name's Rick Gonzalez. We still need to add a party type. He's our suspect. So we're going to add party type, and we're going to save our changes. And you'll notice a second indicator show up under his name for suspect. So now we have Rick Gonzalez as a party to the case, and he's a suspect. That's all there is to adding a party to a case. In the interest of time, we pick someone who's in our master index. When you first get started with ALEN, that information will need to be entered in, imported from a query, that sort of thing, and your master index will grow over time. So we've entered the offense, we've entered the location, we've entered the suspect, we've marked the suspect arrested, and now we probably need to go back to the details and write our narrative. So to do that, we just click on the details component, click on the narratives tab, and we're going to add a new narrative. This is one of everyone's favorite parts of our records management system because narratives are never fun, and the easier and faster we can do them, the more we enjoy it. So to enter the narrative, Officer 1 is going to click on Add New, and Officer 1 can just type to his heart's content. And I want to show you what's going to happen if I type a misspelled word. The system knows that it's misspelled and highlights it in red. I can right click and get some suggestions, and I can clean up my narrative as I go rather than writing a narrative, realizing there's a misspelled word, and having to rewrite the whole thing. Okay, so once you get your narrative keyed in and spell checked and all that, you do have the option to use some of the formatting tools if you want to. We have bold, italics, underline, strike through. We've got, left justify, right justify, center, bullets, the whole 9 yards. All of the typical content creation tools that are needed and that are in modern day software are available here for your narrative. So, like I said, this is one of the favorite things about our system for most of the people that join us. Once the narrative is like you want it, you save the narrative, and your narrative is there from now on. As you can see, we still have an Add New button. You can put in a supplemental narrative. Someone else can come in here and add a narrative. You can change which narrative is primary and which ones are supplementary. So that is the Narratives tab. And with that, we are pretty close to ready to generate the report. Now, to generate the report is also a component of the case. So what we'll do is we'll come over to the components, we'll say Add New, we'll tell the system that we need to generate an incident report. And what the system's doing right now is it's taking all the data from the case file that we just put in about our suspect, the fact that he was arrested, the location data, the offense data, all that, and has generated this incident report. So as you can see, it's not a real long report. You notice that we don't have a complainant, a victim, or a witness, so those sections are collapsed. But we do have a suspect, we have a location, that sort of thing. So as the officer 1 will come in and he'll look at this, he'll read it, proofread it, make sure everything's marked correctly, basically double check and triple check everything. Let's say we notice that we seized some drugs and it's not on this report. So Officer 1 can quickly and easily come right over to the Components tab, or the Components list, and click Add New for Property and add in what was seized. So we seized some drugs. It was crack cocaine. It was about 2 grams. We put all that in. We say that it's seized, and it was a small plastic bag in his pocket. Okay. So we confiscated it off Rick and so now we have the property and it's part of our case, and we have that it's seized. We need a seized location, so we can copy it from the case location just that quick and update the property. So now we need to go see if the report looks better. The way we do that is we go back to our incident report. Now it looks exactly the way it did a few minutes ago, because remember I told you that it was rendered report using the data currently in the system. Now there's new data in the system with regard to the property. So what we want to do is we want to refresh the report. Before we refresh the report, I want to bring your attention down here to this information about the report. It's currently in an unsubmitted status. We knew that before we went in there. If it was not in an unsubmitted status, then we would not be able to make changes. But it hasn't been submitted yet. So we fixed the data. Let's refresh the report. Let's see if our property came in onto the report as it should. So we're going to scroll down. There's our suspect. Here's our property. And yes, we have a small plastic bag from his pocket. It's drugs. And it was seized at this location. Coming on down, we can proofread the narrative. If there's something we don't like, we know we can go back and edit the narrative. Once we have it the way we want it and we're ready to submit it, we click the submit button. Now, as soon as the submit button is pressed, the report is locked, and it stays locked until the supervisor either rejects it for changes or approves it. So we're going to submit the report, and it will sit and wait for the supervisor to approve it. When the submit button is clicked, the supervisor will get an alert through our communication system that there's a report ready to be approved. Report submitted. It lets us know down here that it's submitted successfully, and you'll notice down here in the components list that it's now in submitted status. I'm not a supervisor. I can't change anything, so all I can do is wait and see if it gets approved. One thing I want to mention about adding the property a second ago: if your agency doesn't allow officers to add property to the system and wants the evidence custodian to do that every time, that's not a big deal. The only reason we added it here is so that it would be on the report. So that is your decision. So we will demonstrate evidence management in a different video. We'll also demonstrate supervisor rejection and approval process in another video. And this video, again, was intended to show you how quickly and easily a patrol officer or any officer could write an incident report in the ALEN system. Now we have a completed submitted report, and Officer 1 can go on to the next one or whatever needs to be done. So thank you very much for spending time with me today and taking a look at the ALEN records management system from the officer's perspective. Next, you'll see how to get in touch with us if you want a different video experience, if you want to see something that is more involved, or if you want to schedule a personal demo with us. We'd be glad to set that up and work with you on it. Thank you again for your time, and as always, Stay safe out there, and thank you for what you do to protect your community. Bye-bye now.